In our third part of building a computer, we are going to start on the motherboard. It'll be pretty quick, get ready. So the processor that we chose to go inside of this computer is going to be the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X. And as far as consumer processors go, consumer means pre-Threadripper. This is the fastest processor you can get. So, pretty excited about installing it. And it's the only one that's less than like $1,000 that's pre-business. So, that's pretty awesome. So the instructions said I needed to take this and pull it up. And then it said there is an arrow, which I guess is this thing right here. And I have to line this arrow up with the arrow on the back of this here. And it's saying that it should just slide in. This processor reminds me of like the old i7 4770Ks because they looked just like this. So it should work the exact same way. So if I'm looking at this right, the arrows are lined up and it just slides down in there. And as you can see, it just fell right in like it always belonged there. Just push this down and it is in. There's no play. So the processor is installed. Now the instruction manual also says that in order to run the RAM as dual channel, it needs to be in the 2 black slots. This is A1 and B1, and this is A2 and B2. And in order to run them as dual channel, they have to be in different channels. So it can't be A1, A2, and it can't be A1, B2, because if it's A1 and B2, then they're not linked, which is why these are both black. So A1, B1, that's where we have to install our RAM. Let's do it. So for RAM, we are going with 2 sticks of 32 gigabytes from Elite Team. And it looks like it is running at 3200 is the speed, which I don't really think that it matters too much, the RAM speed, as long as you have a lot. I think that's the most important thing. Now that's probably completely wrong, but it's always been my motto: brute force is always the best force. Now, but so you just slide it in there, and as you can see, it clicked in. So now that it's slid in there, you know, it's in there. It's not going anywhere. So you don't want to force it. You just want to make sure it's not going anywhere. And we're going to install the other piece right beside of it in the black slot, not the gray one. So I'm actually skipping one. Alright, so this is in here too. It's safe, it's secure, they're in the right channel. It is 64 gigs of RAM, and I can upgrade it all the way to 128, but that'll be an upgrade for another day. We're just getting started with this thing. So before I get started installing the SSD, this is actually only one of 4 types of hard drives we'll be using in this computer. That's right, it's going to have 4 different kinds of hard drives, and this one is the only one that will bolt directly into the motherboard. It is a 2 terabyte M.2 4th generation SSD, which will run 400 times faster than my wife's hard drive in her laptop. So that is super awesome. But before we do that, we have to install the heatsink on it. Now, the way that this motherboard works is it has an M.2 drive here and a heatsink. But this is for Generation 3 SSDs only. And this is the Generation 4 so we had to buy one. So let me install it. I got one that matches. It was $9. It was one of the cheapest ones. So it didn't cost a lot, but it's weird that your faster drive didn't come with the heatsink and your slower drive did. It's crazy. So look what I did. Barely any help from my wife. It's beautiful. Matches my eyes and my beard. It doesn't, but it's really great. And with that, my friends, the processor, the SSD, and the RAM are all installed. They are all the same color, and they all look like they belong here, except for this green, but we'll get into that later. So last time you saw one of these videos, we were talking about how we were installing hard drives, and you remember the SSD, but then we have a first generation SSD, which is 2.5, and then we have a second generation SSD, which is also 2.5, and then we have the hybrid drive, which is a 4 terabyte old style 3.5 SATA. So the first one, installing that was easy, and it looks like installing these are gonna be super simple. This big one, on the other hand, that goes in here very awkwardly, so I'm just gonna show it to you once it's installed because of how hard it is to install it. So let's get that done. So now we have the placement for the hard drives. As you can see, it can accept 2 3.5s or 3 2.5s across. It can accept 1 2.5 on each side, and then it can accept 2 M.2 SSDs. So really, if I didn't have that giant 3.5 on the other side, you could put 7 hard drives in this computer. You know, as long as you had enough of these slots for them. Moving on, we got the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 3070 Ti from Vision, because this thing is made to be overclocked. It is made to be overclocked at almost the same specs as a 3080, and I can post those results for you in this other video. I'll link it down below so you can see it. It's awesome, and it costs more than $500 less than the 3080. So why wouldn't we get it? It's the second best you can get as far as NVIDIA gets, and that's super awesome. Before I put the graphics card in, I just wanted to talk about this. These things get bigger and bigger every year, right? And the last one that I put in a computer was a 9070 GTX. So it was 4 generations behind this, so 6 to 7 years ago. These new cases actually have a place for these graphics cards to sit so it doesn't bend. And I remember I put one of these in the 9070 in that case I was talking about, and it was so heavy, even though it was clipped in, it was like leaning this way, and eventually it weakened that slot and I had to replace the motherboard. So it is completely different, and it is now installed. And now it is wanting me to move on to the cooling, so that'll be fun. I'm gonna install my radiator to this plate. Now I did take this off because all of these wires were getting in the way, and I'm just gonna run the wires down through here. But if you do get this case, the wires are gonna interfere with each other, so I took it off so I can slide the wires down through this hole instead of through the middle of this hole where they were, so I can have the extra room for my fan wires. So at this point in the video, I'm going to go ahead and end part 3. Next part will be the final part, so be sure to watch that one. I have to take a bunch of the components out to put the AIO in. It's not going to fit inside of the graphics card. And I was wondering if I could put 2 fans on the back of the AIO to pull air all the way through. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I don't know how long the graphics card is. But stay tuned for the final part of building the computer in the next episode. See you guys next Monday. Bye.